How's it going out there, everyone? Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the reprints that are coming in Modern Horizons 3. We talked about a lot of the cards that are new to this stuff, and I'm glad that Modern's getting some new toys, but so is Commander as well. But let's talk about the reprints that are coming in the set and things that actually kind of matter. There's a lot of reprints that are just kind of like, whatever. These are things that are going to be good for us in Commander and Historic Brawl because we're getting new things entering that as well. So let's take a look at those cards now from that particular lens. And let's get the obvious out of the way with what's on the screen right now. The fetch lands. Now, these are already on Arena thanks to the Khans of Tarkir remaster that they did just a few months back. But now we actually have new arts that we can gain access to. And this gives a new reprint for the modern format and Commander as well, because these were starting to creep up in price because they haven't been reprinted since the original Khans of Tarkir over 10 years ago or so. So this allows us to gain access to those. And this, I'm just going to show the Bloodstained Mire, but there's the other allied fetches in there as well. So that's a good thing to have on there. And then we'll move on to the next one, which is a reprint of Recruiter of the Guard. This originally was in Conspiracy Take the Crown as a rare. Unfortunately, they've upshifted it to a mythic at this point. I don't know why they do these things, but this should help because Recruiter is actually up there in price. It's a good thing to have in the game. It's great for digging up, more threats to play on the board and keep your threat flowing in like white aggro decks and those sort of things. It's also kind of nice if you wanted to have like a creature based combo deck and you can kind of search up some of those pieces in that same way. So this is a good one to have there as well. I like the card. I just really wish they would not have upped it to a mythic instead of leaving it at rare. Now, not all of the good cards are actually in the mythic and rare slot. There are some pretty good uncommons and commons in the set too. And this is one of my all-time favorites. This is Buried Alive. 3 mana, you're going to just go ahead and bury 3 things in the graveyard, and you get to use them for your recursion shenanigans. One thing that I really want to try this out in is the Myco Tyrant, because you're going to get 3 creatures, which gives you 3 Descend triggers. So that deck's going to see a nice little toy added to it once this hits Arena, and once I want to go ahead and pick up an additional copy for my paper version as well. And another good black card at the 3 mana value slot is Toxic Deluge. This is now coming to Arena as well, and this is also entering the modern format. This was originally printed in Commander. This is a Commander All-Star. And this has seen like this is like the 3rd or 4th reprint in the last year that this thing has seen. And the price of the card is still surprisingly fairly high with all those reprints. So now we get another version. Now in Commander, this is a great card because you have such a high life total that you can dump a bunch of life into this and it doesn't really affect you nearly as much as it does in a 60 card format. So we're going to have to wait and see if it actually does anything in 60 card formats. The life totals might be just a little too low to get more than maybe -2 or -3 out of this thing at a time that you're doing it. You're not going to want to dump, 5, 10 life into it like you could in Commander. That said, it's a great way to wipe out boards, takes care of indestructible creatures, takes care of hexproof creatures because it doesn't target anything. There's just all kinds of good ways to go ahead and use this to get around some restrictions that you need to. And again, I'm glad they're reprinting it because of the cost. So it gives it more copies out into the format for us to get our hands on. Then we have a guy that I've already talked about before when they did their leak coverages about a month ago or so. This is Sylvan Safekeeper. You sack a land, give something Shroud. This is just a great way to stop opponents from messing with your stuff. Yes, sacking a land is kind of a big cost, but if you're in something like a Elf Ball deck where you have a bunch of little stuff, you want to slot a few of these in your sideboard, maybe just against a deck that has a bunch of removal or whatever, this is a great card. It's also really good in Commander, and unfortunately, the price on it has crept up. It was only reprinted in Precon since its original printing in the Judgment set all the way back in like 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. So, this card has gone up in price over the years, which we've seen recently reprints that have one printing from, 15, 20 years ago. They reprint it and it goes from being like a $30 card all the way down to being like a $5 to $10 card. So that said, that's what I expected out of Sylvan Safekeeper. I expect it to fall down to about a $5 to $10 card, where it's currently sitting in about the $20 range. So in Modern, I do think this is going to get some sideboard play at the very least, especially in like some kind of Elf Ball deck or maybe even mono green Devotion type decks, just as ways to keep you from blowing up their stuff. Because if you can, just chain your mana off, sacking a land or two here and there isn't really going to hurt you in the long run. And I just love this card. It's just a great protection card. Then we have a card that hasn't been reprinted in quite a while, and unfortunately, they also rarity upshifted the thing, and that is Phyrexian Tower. You can tap it to sack and make 2 black, or you just tap it for colorless, whatever you need to do. This was reprinted in the original Jumpstart, and it was also reprinted, I think, in the first Double Masters, and then it's all the way back in Urza's Saga as the original version of this. And the card is sitting currently around $57 to $58, depending on where you're going for. So this might put a little bit of a dent in it, but I don't think it's going to put too much of a dent because of the rarity being upshifted. So not as many of them is going to get into the market as we would like. This is a great card in Commander. It's just, perfect for aristocrat style decks. For Historic Brawl, I've used it to great effect where you're sacrificing stuff to get the aristocrat triggers, and then you also get the mana off of it. This might actually find some homes in the modern format, depending on the deck that wants to use it. I'm not quite sure where that is because I don't play a whole lot of modern, but I anticipate this not falling a lot, and it may even go up in price if it becomes popular enough in modern to garner, at least a couple copies in a deck. Another card that we already have on Arena, but this time they're printing at the appropriate rarity. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a Victimize, sack a creature, get 2 back out of your graveyard for 3 mana. This thing is an amazing card. I love Victimize. People, say, oh, it's not that great. You're sacrificing one of your worst creatures. Sometimes it's just a token creature and getting back 2 of the biggest nasties you might have buried in your graveyard. That's a great rate. And for not that much, unfortunately, they put it in the special guest slot I think it was in either Murders at Karlov Manor, or it might have been even one before that, at Mythic on Arena. And it's like, great. So you have to waste a Mythic wildcard if you want to get this. Well, patience is rewarded to those who wait, and now you can get it for a uncommon wildcard instead, which is the much more appropriate cost for this card. So, I'm glad to see this. We're getting in our Arena at a good price. This is kind of akin to the Lightning Helix situation where they had those up in the rare slot for the Strixhaven stuff, and now it's back down to the uncommon or common slot out of the Murders at Karlov Manor set instead. Then we have one of my favorite elves of all time, but it's been shifted from common to uncommon, and that is Priest of Titania. Tap, add a mana for each elf you control. This is going to get play in any kind of elf ball style decks where you're just playing a giant amount of elves. This is going to get play in any kind of deck where you're trying to generate a bunch of mana to dump into big X spells or anything like that. It's a great card. And the original version of it goes for like $8 or so for certain ones. The only foil version that we had of this was a Judge foil, and it's going for around $95. So this is going to let you get a much cheaper foil variation on this card available, and it has an old border form as well as this new border form, so you can kind of get your foil on either way. And I think I remember seeing it. It's around $7 right now on pre-order in foil. That's a far cry from $96. Then we're also getting another Commander All-Star that actually has made a splash in Legacy, and that is Kappa Cannoneer. It gets bigger and it's unblockable for every time an artifact comes into play. It has Ward 4 and it improvises to get itself into play even cheaper. Now, will this actually be good enough to play in Modern? Probably. Not quite sure there yet. Is it good enough to play in Historic Brawl? Also probably, and I can't wait to give it a try and see if I can make it work in that format. So let's go ahead and see what we get out of this, but it's great to see this card, which actually has been reprinted a few different times now. Recently even, it was in the Murders of Karlov Manor Clue Precon, and it's still commanding about an $8 price tag. So hopefully this will dent that just a little bit. And speaking of a card that got itself dented with reprints, this is Branching Evolution. This was reprinted in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Merfolk deck. And at the time of its reprint, it only had one printing at the time, and it was like a $20 card. Well, now with this reprint, it's pre-sailing for about $3.80. It's a lot more affordable now because this is actually, I think, the third reprint in the last 8 months or so, because it was reprinted in the LCI precon. It was also printed with a variation in the Fallout precon, the Mutant Menace one. And then now we get this reprinting now. So that's a lot of reprintings, which has definitely ground it down to where it's much more affordable for anybody who wants to play a +1/+1 counter strategy. Now, for Modern, I'm not sure where that's going to be, because the only +1/+1 counter strat that I really knew of was Hardened Scales Affinity, and that deck's not been really all that great in recent years. There's just been bigger and bigger, better stuff that's shoved it out of the format thanks to the Modern Horizons 1 and 2 sets. So maybe this will bring it back. Who knows? But we'll see what happens. But all in all, I'm glad to see this for commander purposes. And we get a cool new art variation for the arena as well. Then we have the medallion cycle. I just have ruby medallion on screen, but there's the 5 of them: the emerald, the jet, the pearl, the sapphire, and the ruby that does their corresponding color and makes them one less. These are great cards, and for a long, long time, they had only had one printing in Tempest, and they were, $30, $40 cards. Some of them are now down around the $10 mark. The ruby and the jet are actually still up a little bit. Sapphire's up a little bit as well. So hopefully this will get all of them down below that, $10 mark. These are great. People look at them and go, well, they're not that good, but you have to think of them as, tapping an additional mana rock. And the more spells that you can actually discount on a turn, it's like tapping a mana rock multiple times in a row on that turn. So if you're chaining 2 or 3 spells that got discounted by 1, it's like tapping a mana rock for 3 colorless mana to shave that mana off of those spells. So that you have to think of it that way to understand how good these are. Some of these might actually see play in modern. I'm not sure what we'll see them. I don't know if it may be like some kind of artifact synergy deck where you play this and then you actually reduce the color of things and then use like the improvised mechanic with the Kappa Cannoneers. Like we might get like the Sapphire medallions with the Kappa Cannoneers both showing up in decks there. It'd be kind of cool to see how that one works out. And just like with the medallions, everything I just said about those medallions, Urza's Incubator, the same things apply there. This thing reduces the mana cost of a chosen creature type by 2, and it is a great card. And it needed a reprint. It was just reprinted in Dominaria Remastered last year, and it's still commanding like a $25 to $30 price tag because it's so good and it's so popular. And I'm thinking, big creature decks, dragons, Eldrazi's, dinosaurs. Those are the things where it's like you want to name one of those, and this will shave 2 mana. And you have to think of it as you're casting a creature of the creature type that you name off of this. It's like having a soul ring that doesn't tap on the board every one of those that you do it. So if you're able to chain 2 or 3 creatures off of this, and you're shaving those soul ring amounts of mana off, you could shave, 4, 6 mana a turn off using this. And that turns into a great value over the course of a game, as long as you can keep your hand full and keep casting those spells. And then the last card I want to talk about today it's coming into a modern, but I don't think it's going to see a lot of play. That is Kalia of the Vast. 2/2 flyer. When it attacks, you get to put an angel, a demon, or a dragon out of your hand, tapped and attacking onto the battlefield. This thing is a Commander all-star. Has been since the original printing in Commander, which I think was all the way back in 2011 for the first precon. And this thing will take over a game if you do not deal with it right away. Now, it might see some play in Modern. I don't know. I think it might actually be just too slow in that format. But it's nice to see another reprint of it for Commander, and you can build a deck just about any way you want to do it. You can build it as a mix of the 3 types that go in the deck, or you could just do a straight up dragon, an angel, or a demon deck to kind of force those synergies, especially angels, I think has a lot of stuff going for it. Dragons have certain things like +3/+3 to all dragons, enchantments, and things like that, that you can kind of home a deck in on and use that to a better effect if you just want to focus on one types. So with that said, that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, like, comment, subscribe. All those things help my channel grow as we're on the road to my first 1,000 subscribers. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day and keep your eyes peeled because the pre-con upgrade videos are coming soon.